We've been hearing today the Prime Minister has vowed to overhaul efforts to close the gap after it was revealed only 2 of 7 targets are on track. For more, joining us live now is the Shadow Indigenous Affairs Minister, Linda Burney. Linda Burney, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Sadly,
Thanks,
every year that this report comes out, and I remember being there in Canberra for the first few reports released under a Labor government, regardless of which party's in power, it seems the results are disappointing. How far off are we from having a report we can be proud of? How long do you fear Indigenous people in this country will have to wait for that gap to sufficiently close? Because I know, as you've already pointed out today, these are people we're talking about, not statistics. We're talking about real people, real lives.
Thank you, Ash. Yes, we are talking about real people, and I get worried sometimes that there's a bit of a industrial deafness, to quote Mick Dodson, when we talk about statistics. And on every social scale, of course, Aboriginal people fare the worst. The disappointment today is that the 2 targets that are on track, and that being Year 12 attainment and 4-year-olds going to preschool, were the same targets that were on track last year. The other 5 targets still remain elusive. What is positive is that the partnership that has been forged between the Coalition of Peak Organisations and the federal government is important, and I am hopeful that the new targets in that partnership will bear fruit. What Anthony Albanese said today was really important, and that is that we can't come here year after year and wring our hands.
I know you have looked at these targets very closely. Why is it that there is such a gap in the Indigenous and non-Indigenous child mortality rate? I mean, in this day and age, when you look at those statistics, the mind really does boggle as to why there is such a huge gap on that front. We obviously need to do better.
Well, that's absolutely correct. And the sad reality is the more remote you go, the more further you get from metropolitan areas, that gap in fact becomes, as Anthony said, a chasm. Why? Well, that is a very challenging question, but essentially it's got a lot to do with poverty, entrenched poverty. It has a basis in racism, it has a basis in history, but it also has a basis in really poor living conditions, the housing overcrowding, the capacity to be able to care for your child, and of course it has a lot to do with what happens before a child is born and the way in which prenatal care is given and undertaken.
You did mention the areas where there have been positive steps forward, like early childhood and education targets. Those do deserve to be celebrated, don't they? I mean, these are areas that will hopefully reap rewards in other facets of life in terms of having a longer term impact for those people.
Yes, these 2 targets should be celebrated. I'm particularly interested in education. It's a lot of what I've done with much of my professional life. Having an increasing number of children doing preschool, Year 4 is important, but the amount of children, whilst that target is going to be, or is on track to be met, is less than it was in the past. The Year 12 attainment is important because that means that we'll have more people going on to university, and once again, as Anthony and the Prime Minister both said today, education is such a key to addressing social disadvantage. I think the other important point today is that we shouldn't just frame this all in a negative way. There are such success stories at the local level, and we should celebrate those successes as well.
Well, the Prime Minister certainly talked about that in his address to the Parliament today. He was saying that he doesn't believe this reporting method really highlights the real progress that is being made. He said the targets don't celebrate the strengths, the achievements and aspirations of Indigenous people. Are you optimistic that the new version of the Closing the Gap that he's talking about to be rolled out next year will result in real-term gains, that because it's more locally led, that there's more collaboration, that we will see a truer picture of where we're at?
Well, I certainly hope so. I haven't been involved, or the Labor Party hasn't been involved at all in setting the new targets, which is, to me, not a terribly bipartisan way to approach things. I understand, though, that there are going to be some targets in the new ones that the Labor Party has been calling for, and that's very positive. I hope it transpires to be that. But it really is important for people to understand that the disadvantage in some communities is not reflected by these targets. These are a national average, of course, and in some targets the unemployment rate, in some places I should say, the unemployment rate, the level of infant mortality, things like suicide, which are not necessarily reflected, are just so high, and quite frankly a lot of people Aboriginal people are just sick of going to funerals, funerals of people that die way too young.
Yeah, we can absolutely understand that, and obviously everybody hopes that next year we do see better results for these real lives, as I know it's important to keep pointing out over statistics. I am keen for your view on this landmark High Court ruling we saw yesterday. It found that Indigenous people, including those born overseas who are not Australian citizens, that they can't be considered as aliens under the Constitution, they can't be deported on character grounds. Are you comfortable with that judgment and the creation of what is essentially a new race-based constitutional distinction?
Well, I don't see it in the way that you've described it, Ash. I think it's a really important decision. It was a 4-3 judgment of the High Court, and what I hear in that is a recognition of the very important and unique connection First Peoples have to the country, and when I say the country, I don't just mean Australia. I also mean to their individual countries. In my case, it would be Wiradjuri. So I do think it's significant. I do think it's important constitutionally, and has probably some much wider ramifications, which we're really still unpacking.
The Law Council pointed out that this decision really confirms that the question of membership of Aboriginal societies is outside of the legislative power of the Australian Parliament. Is that as it should be, in your view?
I think it's important that there is finally a recognition, which in part is what Mabo, the High Court decision on Mabo did, a recognition that Aboriginal people were the First Peoples and are the First Peoples of Australia, and I don't think we should be afraid of the decision at all.
It was interesting to see the Chief Justice who dissented from the ruling. Her argument was that this decision would actually attribute to this group the kind of sovereignty which was implicitly rejected by the Mabo ruling. It can be read a number of ways, obviously, but when it comes down to it, there are people who are questioning what sort of precedent this sets. Some suggesting it could be a dangerous precedent because it could be out of step with essentially community views on the government's rule of law and not separating one group of people, including foreign criminals in this case, when you're looking at the legal definitions that have been used here, in terms of not letting the Australian law carry out as intended to a certain group of people.
Sure, look, there will be different interpretations. There always is in any particularly High Court decision, and as you pointed out, there were dissenting judges, but at the end of the day it was a 4-3 ruling, and as I said, I welcome it because I think it reinforces what's something that is the truth, and that is that Aboriginal people are the original custodians of this country. I welcome the decision, and as we see in the coming days, we'll work out what other implications there are. But right now, I've got question time in a couple of minutes, and I welcome the decision very much.
We will let you rush off to that, Linda Burney. Appreciate your insights
Thank
because we all wish you the best of luck in terms of the bipartisan approach to closing the gap, which we all know is so important. Linda Burney, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ash.